Hello, I'd like to ask you a question. What happens in Fallout 4 after you finish the game? Today, I would like to answer that question. But before that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about what happens after a Minuteman ending. But before that, I'd like to go through a quick Fallout 4 recap. First off, the Institute is destroyed, the Railroad are still alive, the Brotherhood of Steel is present in the Commonwealth, the Prydwen is present at the Boston airport, and the Brotherhood of Steel has an outpost at the police station in Boston. This video will assume that all the main quests are completed except for quests locked behind factions' main quests. I will also be assuming that all settlements are controlled by the Minutemen. In this world, the player has a good relationship with the Brotherhood of Steel and the Railroad. The first major event in this timeline is once the Institute is destroyed, the sole survivor goes back to the castle and begins construction of the Commonwealth Provincial Government, CPG. The sole survivor sets up the Minutemen as the primary military force for this organization. With the death of Diamond City's previous mayor, the council steps up to start creating a next election. Piper will begin running with support from the sole survivor and will quickly win this election. With Diamond City being an economic powerhouse, along with it having a new mayor in the form of Piper, it becomes the CPG's new capital. The Minutemen set up outposts in Nuka World and Far Harbor, Nuka World to protect the Nuka World Trader, and Far Harbor to act as a far-out outpost to keep peace with Acadia, the Nucleus, and the Harbor people. Sanctuary and the Starlight Drive-In become known settlements thriving with over 30 settlers each, making them some of the biggest settlements in the region. They become massive farms and trading centers. A trade and supply network is set up between all existing settlements, guarded and protected by the Minuteman, and the Prydwen takes Elder Maxon back to the Capital Wasteland to prepare for taking the Commonwealth. The Minutemen, wary of war, spend the early days setting up infrastructure such as improving roads, setting caravans up, and basic rule of law based on old pre-war library books. Once all of this is done, they get back to work clearing out some raider groups and hostile super mutants along roads to keep their caravans and traders safe. In the coming weeks, with Synths no longer under direct threat due to the destruction of the Institute, the Railroad shifts from rescuing Synths to act more as a rights activist group. The Railroad takes on the role of a spy network and intelligence organization for the CPG and the Minuteman. As a result, the sole survivor places protections for ghouls, friendly super mutants, and synths. With the growth of the CPG just beginning, the sole survivor and the first president send some of the Railroad agents to spy on the Brotherhood of Steel. Although they are a member, the Council and key Minutemen figures like Ronnie Shaw and Preston Garvey are concerned of an imminent invasion, especially with the Brotherhood of Steel in the region spending time building up their defenses at Boston, police station, and the airport. Time passes, and around 6 months later, the Railroad spies reach the Capital Wasteland and sees that the Brotherhood of Steel is building up military forces. Weeks after the discovery of the Brotherhood of Steel's buildup, the CPG begins building up as well. Outpost Simondra is brought online as a listening post to broadcast and receive messages, and with the military buildup, the Mariwork construction site and Hangman's Alley are turned into military production and manufacturing facilities. Although they can't make power armor and advanced weapons, they can produce combat armor and combat rifles. The average Minuteman is issued with a combat rifle and sturdy combat armor, making the average trooper well armed, and the training at the castle increasing in both number and the quality of the trooper. The Minuteman begins sending troops to go from pre-war military base to base to collect pre-war armor and equipment. With over 50 suits of power armor in the Boston area, the Minutemen send out retrieval units to get as much as possible. And with Paladin Dance's expulsion from the Brotherhood of Steel, the sole survivor explains the error of the Brotherhood of Steel, and Dance begins to come around, beginning to help teach the groups of troops how to use power armor more effectively, and the first heavy platoon of soldiers is born. The first mechanized unit consisting of 24 soldiers and 4 mechanics begins. The power armor varied. Some of it was XO1. It was too expensive to maintain for large general troops, so the armor the platoons used was primarily consisted of T-45 and some T-51. As time moves on, the CPG begins making around roughly 3 mechanized platoons, and keeps 1 at the castle, 1 remaining in Diamond City, and the last became the sole survivor's personal unit. Most were equipped with T-60, and the XO1, they used some of the most advanced weapons available, mainly Gatling lasers and plasma rifles, and some advanced firearms as well. The CPG had around 6 Minuteman infantry platoons, with combat rifles and sturdy combat armor, and 24 troops in each platoon. Time was, however, running out, so that the sole survivor and their platoon, as well as 3 more infantry platoons, laid siege to Quincy, wiping out all gunners to prevent them from sapping and attacking supply lines from the castle. The Brotherhood of Steel bases in the area sent a representative to the sole survivor, demanding all the territory and technology within. The CPG Council, along with the sole survivor, refused, and so the Brotherhood of Steel declared war. The first Brotherhood of Steel base to fall was the Boston Police Station. The sole survivor and 2 Minutemen platoons assaulted the base. The battle raged for around 3 hours, resulting in a Minuteman victory, with minor losses. The 1st Infantry Platoon took some minor casualties. The sole survivor knew this would be a long and possibly losing battle. They requested more than 4 infantry platoons as well as 2 more mechanized infantry platoons. They also wanted to see if old military vehicles can be repaired, and they had all major military bases and settlements set up with artillery and turrets. The Alley and Markwater construction site are built up with artillery and turrets, along with North Hogman Beach is built up for the upcoming siege of the Boston airport. 2 fishing boats were used to make Spectacle Island into a Minuteman fortress, with manufacturing and agricultural base there present as well. The Minutemen started their initial assault on Fort Boston, as it would become known as. Putting tons of pressure, the 1st and 3rd infantry platoons were entirely wiped out, and the 2nd Mechanized took major casualties, but they managed to kill over half of the Brotherhood of Steel forces. The remaining Brotherhood of Steel forces retreated in the night, blowing up all the equipment they had to leave behind. After the battle, 2nd Mechanized were stationed at the castle to get replacements. A month after the Battle of Fort Boston, the 2nd was fully resupplied, and 5 more infantry platoons were ready, and 1 more mechanized platoon was as well. 4 pre-war tanks and 2 pre-war infantry fighting vehicles were. However, this would only be a lull in the fighting. The Prydwen would return in the coming days. With a fleet of vertibirds and old pre-war armor, they pushed towards Fort Hagen, where a small military unit of Minutemen was taking over old pre-war military units. The entire Minuteman platoon was wiped out in an instant. The 2nd Mechanized was sent to the Alley, along with 2 infantry platoons to defend it. The battle for the Alley, as it was known, would, however, come to an end in a loss. The Brotherhood of Steel only taking minor losses at the cost of a whole mechanized unit and 2 infantry platoons, along with the loss of the production facilities. The Minutemen were then quickly cut off from Diamond City as the Brotherhood of Steel occupied it. The infantry platoons and other forces had to quickly retreat to the castle. The CPG leaders, along with Piper, fled to the castle along with all forces in the area, pulling back to the castle. The siege of the castle, as it would be known, began. The first siege of the castle, that is. The first battle lasted over a day and resulted in a Brotherhood of Steel loss. Major forces were lost during this battle for them. The Minutemen only lost some minor forces, 2 tanks, 1 mechanized infantry, and 2 infantry platoons. These losses could not be replaced, however. After the first embarrassing loss, the Brotherhood of Steel knew they had to send all forces to the castle. So they built up their forces and waited for one last decisive battle that lasted for over 10 days. This battle would break the Minutemen. It resulted in the loss of the sole survivor and their mechanized platoon, as well as all the remaining tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. The Minutemen had as well lost 2 more mechanized platoons and 3 more infantry platoons. The Brotherhood of Steel also took major losses with this battle. With the loss of the sole survivor, the Minutemen took the 2 fishing boats they had and fled to Spectacle Island. The Brotherhood of Steel would hunt down all remaining railroad forces in the area. After which, Diamond City, after the death of Piper, along with the entire CPG Council, the Brotherhood of Steel would push large amounts of propaganda over the fear of synths. And as well as the previous leader being a synth, the Brotherhood of Steel would quickly take total control over Diamond City. All of the hatred and all of the bigots against synths would eventually cause Nick Valentine to be killed. Bunker Hill would quickly send a representative to talk with the Brotherhood of Steel, and they would soon fall in line. With the Brotherhood of Steel's relatively unchallenged control over the Commonwealth, they would begin instilling taxes in the form of payments and labor from most locals, and local farms and other small settlements would quickly join because of the protection. Although the Starlight Drive-In would take some convincing, quote unquote, by some Brotherhood of Steel soldiers, they eventually would join. The Brotherhood of Steel began work developing a tool that could scan a person to detect if they were a synth or not. The Brotherhood of Steel would run a smear campaign on Sturgis, who was the de facto leader of Sanctuary, claiming that he was a synth. They would demand he take a test with their tool. Initially, they had planned on faking the test results, but to their surprise, they found out that he was in fact a synth. As well as to the surprise of everyone, including him, this was their justification to kill him and to take direct control over the settlement. Now the Brotherhood of Steel began destroying all potential threats to their power in the area. The first was all the remaining raiders. Most had already been dealt with by the Minutemen, but there were small raiding groups. And the remaining super mutants in the area were all slaughtered regardless of whether they were peaceful or not. This also included Strong, as he was killed trying to avenge the sole survivor's death at the hands of the Brotherhood. The next Brotherhood of Steel goal was to wipe out all remaining gunner bases in the Commonwealth. The first up was Vault 95. The Brotherhood of Steel sent groups of troops to surround the entrance and starve them out. Once this was completed, they did the exact same thing to Vault 75. Once they were done with that, they moved on to GNR, the radio, the last base they had. The Brotherhood of Steel surrounded it, and after 6 long days and heavy losses, the gunners were defeated in the area, only leaving small raiding bands, which would be slowly picked off as the Brotherhood of Steel cemented their control. The Brotherhood of Steel started to move to secure all technology in the region. The Brotherhood of Steel started to take the technology from the average citizen first. Once they were done confiscating all technology from the general population, they then began looking through the ruins of the Minutemen. They started with the castle, scavenging all the resources they had left, and taking the artillery schematics and resources to build and implement it into the Brotherhood of Steel machine. They also did this to Spectacle Island, as well as the manufacturing positions they had. Once they were done with the remnants of the Minutemen, they would then go to the Atom Cats, requesting to quote-unquote buy the power armor from them. The Atom Cats would eventually be convinced by the Brotherhood of Steel to let go of their power armor. And within some time, they would eventually even be convinced to join the Brotherhood of Steel to help work on their power armor and develop new resources for their power armor. The Brotherhood of Steel, now tired of the constant problems from the children of Adam, decided that they had to exterminate them, that they had had enough. They labeled them as extremists and cultist terrorists for their constant recovery of old nuclear war equipment, and they began the extermination. They started with the plane crash near the lighthouse and the lighthouse. When they had finally finished, they found evidence of an outpost in the glowing sea called the Crater. They had quickly finished up their deeds there and sent robots in to the crater to wipe out these remaining survivors. The surviving synths in the Commonwealth, being treated worse and worse, would attempt to flee to Acadia for safety. Acadia, fearful of what's happening in the Commonwealth, then quickly decided to begin rallying all synths to them. With the loss of the Institute, synths lost the ability to reproduce. The remaining synths, fearful, all went to Far Harbor for fleeing for comfort. With the Commonwealth now fully conquered by the Brotherhood of Steel, they would begin looking for more territory and would hear of the synth refuge and the substation occupied by Children of Adam. And they would send troops up there in the form of a recon team to confirm these reports. The Brotherhood of Steel quickly reported back to them that the synths were actively trying to flee. The Brotherhood of Steel now decided to send a strike team up. However, the sole survivor still haunting them from beyond the grave had brokered peace between the people of Acadia and Far Harbor. So when Far Harbor people had found out about it, they quickly warned Acadia and began rallying around Acadia to assist them. The Battle of Acadia was short but decisive. The strike team came in quickly with their vertibirds. The synths and their allies shot them down. Several of them were killed. A few of them survived their grounding and tried to fight back, but were quickly dealt with and dispatched. The Brotherhood of Steel, after suffering such a severe loss, now no longer had the element of surprise, but they would have to strike again. Back in Acadia, the non-combatant synths quickly fled with the help of the few people from Far Harbor willing to help. A few stayed with the Children of Adam, to fight to the death. The Brotherhood of Steel then sent a massive force to wipe out all the Children of Adam and the few synths. The battle for the substation ended with a Brotherhood of Steel victory, and they left no survivors. They then wiped out all super mutants and trappers in the area and began to try and mass produce the fog condensers to take back the island and keep trade routes opened. They then went and began recovering all the technology in the area and began as well confiscating all technology from the civilians. They then learned that Captain Avery was a synth as they were searching for resources, and then they had her executed. Once they were done, they then took control over Far Harbor, and with the death of the Mariner, there was nothing they could do. Back in the Commonwealth, they found the Nuka World Transit Center. They then searched for Nuka World. After arriving in Nuka World, all the raiders having been gone and the traders being set free, they simply came in, and with the Minutemen no longer guarding them, the traders quickly decided to allow the Brotherhood of Steel to protect them for fees. The traders, not knowing that the Brotherhood of Steel were the ones that killed the sole survivor, simply kept on trading as they usually would. With the Brotherhood of Steel, the sole power in the region, a new era had begun. A dark age of inequality that will force the people to band together to eventually overthrow the shackles of oppression. Because war never changes. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments below what faction you'd like me to talk about next. Maybe it'll be a happier one.